Let's start by going back in time a bit. The year is 1791. A young United States is just 15 years old. George Washington is still president. There are 14 states, and the east coast of America is well populated, but the west coast is still a vast, unexplored wilderness, jointly controlled and contested between Spain, France, and England, the superpowers of the day. In 1791, England sent Captain George Vancouver and 4 ships on a 4-year British exploration of the Pacific Ocean and North America's Pacific coast, with a goal of resolving a Spanish claim to Nootka Sound and claiming the entire area for Great Britain. In May 1792, Vancouver anchored off the site of present-day Seattle and assigned Lieutenant Peter Puget to conduct a detailed survey of the Southern Sound. On May 20th, 16 men departed the main expedition ship Discovery in 2 small boats. Puget spent 7 days rowing and exploring through most of South Puget Sound. In his account of Day 3, he wrote of taking shelter from a thunderstorm in a small cove on the east side of an island, now known as Oro Bay on Anderson Island.
Today, 230 years later, we are celebrating that event by dedicating a new stop on the Peter Puget Trail and reenacting the Peter Puget Landing here at Jacobs Point Park on Anderson Island.
Welcome everybody here this afternoon. It's been a great day to have this, nice and warm weather, no storm or anything. And so we're just, thankful for everybody coming out to see us. And I think Peter Puget will be coming here in about 10 minutes or so. Possibly. Anyway, I want to hand this over to Rick. He's going to introduce a few people.
Actually, we had hoped for the kind of day that Peter Puget had, which was the very reason that he came to Anderson Island, but we couldn't arrange that, so we got the next best thing, a beautiful sunny day. And we're just glad you're here. We're dedicating the newest site on the Peter Puget Memorial Trail, which happened to be the brainchild of Barbara Reed. And Colonel Reed, about 10 years ago, visited the island, came out here with us, and we looked around and thought this would be the spot for a Peter Puget interpretive site. So, and lo and behold, we're very blessed to have Barbara with us today. I think you should give her a hand. And if you'd like to say a few words.
Well, gosh, this is like the biggest surprise of my life, is to finally see this happen. And, all good things are waiting a long time for. But, I've been a boater, a sailor, an explorer, a historian, and I was down on the Snake and the Columbia replicating all of that journey. And so I thought, as soon as I get my boat up to Puget Sound, I'm going to replicate Peter Puget's route. And of course that meant crossing the Columbia River Bar and sailing up and down and around, rather than trucking it up the highway and take the hard route. And so I replicated it, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's not anything along the watery route that shows his route, and I think I just have to do something about that. And so I started thinking about it, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just start talking to the historical societies, and all of the historical societies thought the first pioneers and non-native people were coming from overland. And I said, no, well, Peter Puget was here. And so it's just great that this is one of many memorial sites along his route. So I'm just happy to see all of these people and this incredible work. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Barbara. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here. We have another distinguished guest here who is the artist Gail McDaniel, and she's the one who painted this gorgeous picture that if you're good and behave yourselves, we will unveil that picture in a few minutes.
Well, I have a really dear friend of mine that wanted to be here, but he couldn't make it, so he sent a letter, and I'd just like to read this. It says, "I am pleased to extend warm greeting to all those attending today's celebration in honor of the 230th anniversary of Peter Puget's expedition landing on Anderson Island. This special event is a wonderful opportunity to reflect on the value of our park system, as well as the importance of conservation. Each year, our parks provide thousands of visitors with endless opportunities for recreation and outdoor education, all while enjoying the beauty and the wonder of our nature, culture, and historical heritage. I want to thank the Anderson Island Park and Recreation District for engaging the public to help protect our environment, as well as partnering with stakeholders to help preserve local history and create recreational opportunities. The stewardship of these public lands is vital not only for the health and sustainability of our environment, but also for the enjoyment of future generations. By examining the history of this island park, its previous residents, you have created an educational opportunity that can be used to conserve this beautiful place on Anderson Island. Thank you for being a part of this special celebration. I'm sure you'll all agree that exploring our vibrant and diverse nature or natural spaces is truly an unforgettable experience. Anderson Island is a piece of paradise. I don't want that to get out too much, but that should be protected and cherished. That I do want to get out. I hope today's event will inspire you to continue your important work of uncovering the history of this park and conserving it for all to enjoy. Yours very truly, my friend and really good friend of mine, Jay Inslee, the Governor of Washington.
Thank you, Chuck. Probably most of you know at least a little bit about the story of Peter Puget and how he happened to end up here on Anderson Island 230 years ago tomorrow. So, but anyway, in a nutshell, so Peter was given the assignment by Captain Vancouver to explore this, quote, inlet to the south of where they had anchored off of what we call Seattle now. And at that time, they weren't sure if maybe there was another outlet to the ocean. They were looking for the Northwest Passage. So he sent Peter Puget with 16 brave seamen and 2 longboats to make an exploration of this inlet, they called it. So anyway, they were supposed to hug the shore to the right, or the starboard, I guess, as they were going around, and to map and survey as they went, and gather botanical specimens, make contact with the native people, and find out, you know, what they were all about. So as it happened, this was actually, as far as we know, the very first time that any Europeans ever set eyes on this part of the country. There's some that claim that there had been other Europeans visiting, but I don't think so. So now what happened in subsequent years was admittedly a mixed blessing for the natives of this area, but this first contact 230 years ago tomorrow was actually a very positive event for all concerned. Some of you may have heard Danny Marshall, who was the chairman of the Stilichum tribe back, was that 2 months ago? He gave a presentation at the Historical Society, and he presented the view of his people of what they thought of this first contact. And it was very interesting because he said at that time his people were more concerned about the warlike tribes from the north, the Haidas and the Tlingits, would come down and pillage and raid their villages and take slaves and haul them back. So they were surprised to see these real strange-looking people come in and just wanted to trade and be friends. So, and he, whatever you may think of this, Danny said that for the Stilichums at that time, it was just the coolest thing you can imagine to have a little piece of copper or a brass button or something like that. And they were happy to give up their, artifacts and the whole salmon, or, foodstuffs and so on. So anyway, so what we are celebrating is that moment 230 years ago tomorrow when Peter Puget and his 15 other hardy sailors set foot on Anderson Island. And this was no mean feat in itself, because they had just come some 20,000 miles under sail and visited many other places along the world, but their ultimate goal was to come here and explore, look for the Northwest Passage. And they also had an assignment to meet with the Spanish up on Vancouver Island and settle some disputes that they had. The journals that they kept show that they were really keen observers of all manner of the things that they saw. They were all new to them, of course. And you can tell by looking at the maps that they made of this area that they were also excellent surveyors and navigators. And what is striking, moreover, about especially Vancouver and Peter Puget was their humanity. And everywhere they went on their voyage, they made a point of showing courtesy and respect to the indigenous peoples that they met and to try to establish good relations. And what's really interesting is that, of course, they were very heavily armed, you know, for that period of time with all their firearms and so on. And they knew that the people that they met here had no idea, you know, what a musket could do. And so they went out of their way to, you know, just keep things cool. And if they had to, they would demonstrate, you know, shooting their muskets and maybe put a certain amount of fear and respect in the hearts of people who might otherwise want to attack them. So anyway, they had some real adventures, and let's see, they succeeded. They did have a few tense moments along the way. Now, about Peter's visit to Anderson Island and why they happened to stop here, maybe you know this, but on May 22nd, 1792, they stopped at Ketron Island, or Ketron, if you want to call it that, to take a noon sighting of the sun for their navigational purposes. And when they put out after that, they were probably halfway between here and Ketron, which they didn't know it was Ketron Island, of course. A terrible storm blew up out of the southwest, and rain, hail, sleet, heavy winds. So they beat into a small sheltered cove on the west side of what they thought maybe was an island, and camped here for the night. And during that time, they set up their camp, and a little bit later a group of natives came paddling over in canoes. And they set up a rather lively exchange and you know, trading post, I guess, sort of thing. So they had a really good experience with that. And someday we'll have to get over to England and see if we can talk them out of some of the artifacts that they collected here, because they're in the British Museum of all places. I've never seen any bow or arrow or any artifact from the indigenous people here in any museum in this part of the world. After they spent the night here, they got a kind of a late start the next morning because the fog refused to lift until the ungodly hour of 8 o'clock. They normally would be on their way about 4 or 4:30 in the morning, so I'm sure the men didn't object to that too much. But anyway, they rode away, and they rounded Isle Point on the next stage of their journey, which was exploring all the various islands and inlets along the way. I believe the farthest, they got to Bud, to the very end of Bud Inlet, which is, I think, the farthest south portion of Puget Sound. So then they, of course, had to hustle their way back up to meet Vancouver at the mothership, because their 7 days was up. Let's treat you to these beautiful works of art. Gail, would you like to unveil your painting?
I'm anxious to see what it looks like.
Well, I think you're going to be pleased. Yeah. I'll give you a hand here.
Okay. There you go. All right, thanks. Wow.
Hey, isn't that nice? That's right. Photo op.
I did the graphics. So thank her too. Wow.
Now is that Peter Puget standing up there?
Yes, Peter. Yeah, he was the only one who was allowed to stand up in the boat. Maybe Barbara would grace us with unveiling of this one. This is painted by Lynn Jacobson.
Oh, wow.
They look like they're headed this way? Okay. What you're about to see is a reenactment group called His Majesty's Armed Tender Chatham Reenactment, such and such. And they go around doing events, period costumes, and so they have set up an encampment which is similar to what Peter and his men camped in, with old canvas tents and everything. And it's down on our property by our beach at the end of Oro Bay Road. The date they landed here was May 22nd, 1792. So that's 230 years ago tomorrow. The men in the reenactment group, well, Captain Chris Sorensen is the leader of this group, and he lives in Seattle. There's his bosun, Wayne, and he lives on the San Juan Islands. There's a couple from Olympia. One of the members of the crew is our very own Errol Barrett from Anderson Island. And if he was feeling up to it, his brother Eric, and I think Errol's son. There's an Andy and there's a Mark, and I don't know exactly, but they're from the area here somewhere.
Do you know where they camped on the island? You mentioned they...
Okay, yeah, I should have said more about that. We don't know exactly where. We don't even know for certain that it was Oro Bay, but based on the description of the winds and so on, I'm almost certain that they came in here and probably went around to this side. Someday we hope we'll find a brass button or something, but they were very vague for some reason about the exact spot that they camped. Maybe because the weather was so bad they couldn't get any sightings. But one thing that was kind of interesting is on this, you know, the British Navy, of course, had these very strict hierarchies, and the distinction between officers and regular seamen was much more pronounced than what we're used to today. And there was a Lieutenant Mudge who actually outranked Peter Puget, and he should have drawn some of these plum assignments that Vancouver gave to Puget. And there's no real evidence of this, but you read between the lines, and you know the fact that Vancouver named this for Puget, and he named that for Puget. So he apparently didn't think much of Lieutenant Mudge. And so Peter got the assignment instead of Lieutenant Mudge, and as you can imagine, you know, who would want to live on Mudge Sound? I just wouldn't work.
Please form a perimeter, and Mr. Puget, if we could go ahead and get those sightings, if you will. Thank you.
Captain Vancouver was so impressed by Peter's accomplishments and his report that he promptly named all the waters south of, it was actually Whidbey Island was where they were. He named all the waters south of their Puget's Sound. And of course nowadays Puget Sound goes all the way up to Vancouver Island practically, but that was the original one. So Peter, he was quite a guy. His biography is really worthwhile reading. He was very competent. He had an assignment in India, which he handled very well, and eventually became a rear admiral. And so it's a worthy name that we call the Welsh here, Puget Sound.
Excellent. Right.
So these natives look rather different from the ones we have seen in the last 2 or 3 days.
Yes, they do. Quite a lot smarter dressed, I would say.
Hello, my name is Peter Puget. We're here to explore the South Sound for the King. Captain Vancouver has instructed us to make maps of the area and report back to him in 1 week's time. We're about 3 days into our journey so far. We came from a long island in that direction where we stopped to take our noon latitude shot with the octants. And on the way to here, we were beset with a sudden storm, very violent, and it caused us to this bay to seek shelter. And so, as our custom is, we have our Marines for protection. Also, Mr. Manby lost his gun on the Long Island and was not able to complete his hunting expedition.
Quite regrettable. Bear surprised him out of a corner.
Yes.
He went with the fire upon the bear, and in doing so, angered the bear rather than hurt it. And then the bear hurt his gun quite badly. So.
Yes. So, we are in need of provisions, and we have medals and pieces of copper, and we have buttons to trade. Should you have any fresh vegetables or salmon, we would be happy to trade with you for that.
Abalone pelts if you happen to have it.
And also maybe a souvenir or two, a bow, an arrow, otter skin.
Things that might
desirable.
seem common to you, really. Yes, we have considerable amounts of trade goods in case you happen to be wanting to offload yourself. Yes, time and tide wait for no man, so therefore we must do as we can, as best as we can, in these unknown waters. We're not quite sure about how the currents work here quite yet.
Yes, we do have an encampment set up on the eastern side of the bay, on the eastern shore, so please come by and visit our encampment. All right, it was pleasant chatting with you all, and we hope to see you at our encampment in a short while.
Thank you.
Welcome to the encampment, similar to that which Lieutenant Peter Puget would have established here when his boat crew put ashore in Oro Bay in 1792. The camp consists of a common kitchen, where the hierarchy of the Royal Navy in English society would largely be put aside to allow for officers and crew to discuss the day's work while they dined on what rations and game they had brought along or managed to forage on their journey. Next you have the officers' tent, the mobile office of any expedition, where the commanding, warrant, and petty officers would see their work and personal observations recorded in their journals, when not attempting to grab some little but much-needed rest. Next you'll find the tents of the foremast jacks, often made up of spare sail canvas, where the able seamen would sleep in what space they were afforded. Sleeping ashore was thought to be a luxury, compared to a hammock aboard ship, where accommodations were tight-packed, made only slightly more comfortable by the rotation of the watch on deck. Besides this, we find the Marines' tent, sleeping 6 Marines, including the 2 stationed on sentry duty. When not in use, their muskets could be found triangulated smartly in front of their quarters, a glittering display to any foolish enough to challenge the crown. With flag flying, the encampment is a little piece of England on the far side of the world.
Australia, all the way, you're rolling kings, heave away, all the way, you'll hear me sing, we're bound for South Australia. I went walk one morning fair, heave away, all the way, there I met Miss Nancy Blair, we're bound for South Australia. All the way, you're rolling kings, heave away, all the way, you'll hear me sing, we're bound for South Australia. I shook her up, I shook her down, heave away, haul away. Shuck around and round the town, we're bound for South Australia. Haul away, a rolling king, heave away, haul away, haul away. You'll hear me sing, we're bound for South Australia. Heave away, me Johnny, heave away. She's tied up to the cannon, Duck in the Annie is her name. Heave away, Johnny boys, we're all bound to go. Her wages are £1 a month with a half a month's advance. Heave away, me Johnny, heave away. And while you haven't got a ship, you better take a chance. Heave away, Johnny boys, we're all bound to go. So I sang. Me bully boys of Liverpool'll have you to beware. When you sell on them packet ships, no dungaree jumpers wear. But have a good monkey jacket all ready to your hand, for they'll blow some cold nor'westers on the banks of Newfoundland. We'll scrape her and we'll scrub her with holy stone and sand, for they'll blow some cold nor'westers on the banks of Newfoundland.